I think we are
Hello?
live.
Okay, I thought I was in the wrong room for a second because I had your actual, like, your government name, and I was like, I'm in the wrong room?
Oh, I should probably change that.
That's alright.
Just making sure we're live here and everybody can hear us. If you can hear me and Kayla, say hello. Say we can hear you. Just gonna grab the chat.
Oh, okay. If I can hear my cat, she's down here. Wanna come up? Okay, you wanna be up here? No, you just wanna meow? Okay.
So how's your day going so far?
Oh, pretty well. How about you?
Doing pretty good. I had a doctor's appointment today. I guess it was 6 week check in with the bariatric surgeon, and they're pretty excited with my progress so far. They said I'm looking pretty good, and I'm down 86 pounds since surgery, and so that's more than what they usually expect.
Good
So,
job.
yeah,
That's awesome. Congratulations.
thank you. So it was pretty
You're
good.
welcome.
And I talked about in another video how my hair sticking up. How when I first started going there, I would walk to. There's this long walk from the drive where the parking lot is to where they're at, and I'd have to stop several times. They have chairs along the way and take a breath and just be out of breath and sucking in air and everything else. And today I just walked right in there. I wasn't out of breath. I had no problems, nothing. It was just like walked right in there, weighed myself, started swagging a little bit. Like, yeah, I lost weight. I'm doing good, and went and talked to my doctor, and everything is looking great. So,
That's awesome. Congratulations.
well,
I'm
thank you.
really happy.
Hi, Darla. Hi, Intuitive Duck. Good to see you guys. Let us know that if you can hear us before we get started here. We got 6 people watching right now.
Awesome. Yeah, it's my cat. She says hello.
Well, hello.
They hear like her cute little purrs, like what's her name, Shakara transformations. Always has like a little cat ASMR. It's decent.
There is a little bit of a delay, about 30 seconds, I think, so between questions and people commenting,
Okay. Okay.
which I think you've gone live before, so there's a delay.
Yeah, I've experienced it. Yeah.
All right, they say loud and clear.
Yay!
So everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Big Talks with Big T. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you guys so much. This is my friend Kayla Shaye. We've been interacting with one another for several months now, I think. Discovered each other's channels, and I was on her channel. She interviewed me, and it went really well. And so I am reciprocating that and having her on a live show. And we still want to do other shows together, and probably we'll make other videos together in the future. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your channel is about.
Yeah, so my name is Kayla, and I'm a channel. I talk about a lot of different subjects, including fat acceptance, body positivity. I recently had a second channel that's regarding my journey to run my first ever half marathon in September. So that is a brand new channel as well. But I mostly talk about fat acceptance, body positivity, and things of that nature.
Okay. Um, on your channel, you talk a lot about binge eating, and you say you're a former binge eater. Can you share what you want about that? You don't have to get too personal if you don't want to, but
Yeah, so I was a former binge eater in my early 20s, and up until the end of 2021, I did suffer with food addiction and binge eating disorder as a way to kind of get through some difficult times in my life. I was experiencing a lot of different things, being let go from jobs, debt from school, um, poverty, and so on. And I was just kind of going through the motions emotionally, and food was something that I found a lot of joy in. And so I took that and really made it um, the only thing that could make me feel better. And it wasn't until I got therapy that I was able to heal that relationship with food. And that's why I talk about a lot my own journey with that acceptance and binge eating disorder and how I felt as though in my experience that acceptance really did cater to my own mental illness in a way that made it much more destructive for me, just moving forward. And I'm really happy that I was able to see through that. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, I had went to the doctor and found out that I had pre-diabetes when I
Mm.
really realized how deep my addiction to food was. I would spend thousands of dollars on food, fast food, takeout, whatever I could get my hands on, and it caused me to gain a massive amount of weight in a pretty short amount of time. And so I am really thankful that I was able to get help, even though I know that's not accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
I realized that it was something that I needed to do for myself, and that's why I talk about on my channel so much about my own journey with binge eating, because it is real and I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't think it's as glamorized as restricted eating is. And not saying that it's a good thing to be glamorized, but it feels as though it has to be in order to be taken seriously by people at times.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about binge eating, it's seen as a very like gluttonous or sinful thing when in reality it's a mental illness and it should be treated like a mental illness, and that it's not, a death sentence. You can recover from it, and I'm really happy to be able to share my experience on my channel. I'm sorry for rambling a little bit there.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's very interesting. It actually relates to some of the questions, and you and I didn't collaborate too much before, so it's very interesting how your story kind of is going to do well with some of the questions that I have later on. So
Yeah.
before we get too much further into this, I want to say hi to Scout and April. Thank you for joining the chat. If anybody has any questions for me or for Kayla here, anything at all that you want to ask us, feel free to put your questions in there, and we will get to them as soon as we can. So your channel just hit 2,000 subscribers. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
I often say how your channel is growing super fast. You're going to outpace me. I make that joke all the time, but I think it's true. You don't have you don't I have like over 170 videos and you don't have nearly that many, but you're catching up to me, which is awesome. I'm so proud of you for doing that. How would you say that your story and the way you put together videos has connected with people who come to your channel and subscribe to you and follow you?
So I've gotten this quite a lot as far as like people messaging me on my Instagram or on comments on my videos saying that they really resonated with my story, especially regarding my binge eating disorder and my opinions on things. I take a lot of what I talk about from personal experience, and I take a lot of what I talk about just from trying to understand all aspects of an argument. When it comes to fat acceptance, especially, I try my best to analyze every single possible nuance that has to be analyzed in order to have this conversation. And it does reach a pretty broad audience because I'm making arguments that are not only necessarily against that acceptance, but also necessarily against the opposite side of the spectrum. I try
Hmm.
to come at it from a lot of different angles, and I think people really appreciate that I am nuanced and I do deep dive into things and I do constantly question my own opinion, and I discuss that in a very open and honest way with my audience. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really think a lot of my own subscribers joined because I was doing my 600-pound life reactions. And the more I've done those, and not only does TLC give me trouble for doing those, the more I've realized it's like I don't want to really focus on that too much. Like I see what you're doing, I see what Megan's doing, I see what so many others are doing, and they're telling real stories. And that is really what I want to do because it really does connect with people. Like it's a lot more than just sitting down and watching other people struggle, but you're telling your own story. And you're doing it in such a way that people see you and see what you're doing and they really appreciate it because they don't feel heard. A lot of people with binge eating disorder, people who have been morbidly obese like I currently am, but I was much bigger. Um, like there was nobody telling my story or telling your story out there. And it seemed like a lot of more people were joining this fat acceptance movement rather than trying to lose weight, trying to do the work. And here we are, two success stories. Of course, our journeys are still continuing. I see that you started a second channel focused on you wanting to run a marathon. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was too much caffeine or just me being overly ambitious, but I decided to that yesterday or the day before I was like, I'm gonna run a marathon. I'm gonna just do it. I have terrible experiences on it. I haven't ran since high school, and I'm just like I wanted to make a new goal for myself to achieve, and running was something that I've always was so jealous that people just did for fun because I never understood why people did it for fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to see, what the hype is. I want to know what it's like to be a runner, and I want to have this goal and do something that I personally thought I could never do. And so I went online. I was like, marathons in my area, and I found one. And I was like, all right, I have a few months to prepare for this. I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that I'm successful in this because I think it's going to be one of the first biggest challenges since stop and binge eating. That I was like, I'm going to set a goal to do something, and I'm actually going to do it. Like putting binge eating. Like I set that goal that I'm never going to binge eat again, and I don't know what day I'm on at this point. It's definitely near the 500s since I've stopped binge eating, and I wanted to be able to have that same like drive and passion again. I don't even like have a craving for binge eating anymore, but
Mm,
like I have a craving for trying to complete something I never thought I could do before.
that's
And
awesome.
so that's why I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Even if I suck, even if it takes me 4 hours, 5 hours to complete it, even if I walk the entire way, I want to say that I did something that I didn't think I could do.
Hmm.
And it's been so far really rewarding. Even though I just went on my first run today, it kind of proved to me that I actually can run. It's
Yeah.
not very good, but it proved to me that I can do something that I didn't think I could do before. So that's what the second channel is going to document. Just that journey from basically like not necessarily a couch potato, but somebody that doesn't run into a half marathon runner.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I have several people in my life. They're like, Tony, we're gonna go run a marathon this year. I'm like, no, 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 no. I can't do that yet. But so you don't have to answer this if this is too private. But what was your weight at your heaviest?
my heaviest weight that I have recorded, I don't know if I was ever heavier than this, but you hear my cat scratching, I'm sorry. Monkey. Okay, my highest weight was 235 pounds
Okay.
that I recorded.
And
And yeah,
what is your what should be your current weight? Like what?
my, my current weight is 174.
And that's what where you should be.
Yeah, so yeah, I've been kind of just staying steady, losing a half pound. I've been kind of maintaining my weight loss. I haven't lost really much weight in a little while, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm really content with where I am currently. And
So,
I'm like 5'9.5". I'm quite tall, so this is a pretty healthy weight for me.
yeah, you're much taller than my friend Scout. So I always tease her. I
I
say,
was sad that people thought that I was short, so no, I'm really tall.
I admit you do look like you would be a pretty short person, but um, 5'9", that's pretty good. So we got a question from Darla. Do you guys still have any cravings like an ex-smoker or an ex-drinker would have? You just said that you don't really have a desire to binge anymore. How long did it take you to, sorry, as I adjust myself, I still have a lot of pain and back pain and stuff, so I might shift around a little bit. But how long did it take you to go from, I know I need to change to, wow, I don't even crave this anymore?
6 months.
6 months?
I would say 6 months of not binging or giving into that binge. I realized um, that how I could do it. There are still some moments where I'm just like, I just had I celebrated Easter with my family, and they make a very, very big Easter dinner with like amazing food, and I ate all the food that I wanted to eat, but it took a little bit in me not to get seconds. I didn't necessarily need seconds, so that was the first time I had like that little light switch. Sometimes binges get there's like light switch on binging. That was the first time in a while that I've had to like put it down.
Yeah.
But as far as cravings go, or like food that like I crave, um, there's I don't know if you guys know those sugar cookies at Walmart. They come in like different colors.
Hmm.
Some people hate them, some people love them. Those are my biggest craving, and so I don't have them. I don't keep them in the house because I could eat an entire like container of those like soft sugar cookies from Walmart with like the pink or blue frosting or whatever. I try to keep things that I really have cravings for out of my house, just so I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah. Scout just asked if we indulge on the holidays, but I think you just answered that. But my own
I
Easter,
indulge a little
you
bit.
indulge a little
Go
bit.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during Christmas, my birthday, and now Easter dinner, um, it's been really interesting because I'm still not used to what I can eat. I did have the weight loss surgery, and so my eyes are still bigger than what I can eat. So even though I eat much less. Like we had like probably 15 people over for Easter dinner, and everybody else was piling their plates on, and then I put my little bit of this, a little bit of that on my plate, and I walk out. And people are like, "Is that all you're gonna eat? Come on, man, you need to eat more. Like here's some more ham, here's some more potato salad, here's more whatever." I'm like, "No, no, no. I literally can't even eat this. I know I'm not gonna eat it."
Yeah.
And so it's like me knowing that I have that stopgap there, like I still don't even know how much I can eat because some days I can eat a little more, some days I eat a few bites and I'm done. So
Yeah.
it's really tough for me. I don't say I indulge, but I don't stick to my diet, if that makes sense. Like whatever's there, I'm
Yeah.
gonna eat it. Like most of the time I'd probably, try to be more high protein, low carb, that kind of diet. But then on the holidays, it's like, all right, if there's mashed potatoes and gravy, I'm going to have a tiny little scoop of mashed potatoes, and that's going to be all I'm going to be able to eat with maybe a couple bites of ham and whatever. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest thing with me and my binge eating was realizing that I can have things that I want. I shouldn't tell myself that I'm not allowed to eat anything unless I'm obviously like allergic to it or something. But it's just about moderation and portion control. Because I had my Easter dinner and I had potatoes and ham and gravy and stuff, and it was great. But I was able to tell myself, all right, you had your portion, you're done,
hmm.
and think about doing something else. So I went and took my parents' dog on a walk after dinner. So I just got myself out of the distraction, so I didn't feel like I was being pressured to, or I was pressuring myself to binge. I didn't want to do that. That made so much progress, and I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to like keep kind of trying to like keep a streak of how long you haven't binge ate. Once you get into like those hundreds numbers, you're just like, what sorry to swear, but like, what the fuck would be like the point of like giving up now? You've already
Yeah.
gone like 4 days. Why would you stop now? And so, yeah, I definitely like indulge is a good term. I think it's telling that I'm allowed to eat things that I want because I normally eat pretty like clean, I guess,
Yeah.
but I'm still not overeating in a
Yep.
sense.
I think what this weight loss surgery has taught me too, like I was so depressed before surgery. I'm like, oh, I better have my last hamburger. I'm never gonna have this again. Oh, I'm gonna have my last pizza. I know I'll never eat pizza again. And it's like I could still eat those things.
Yeah,
You can eat whatever you want to eat, but within moderation. Like as long as you're counting what you're eating and you're logging it, and if you try to eat clean most of the time, like people were giving me grief because I said I had a couple bites of Ben and Jerry's ice cream on my birthday. I'm like, literally, it was 2 bites. It did make me sick because I'm not supposed to have that much sugar, but I'm like, it's 2 bites. It's like it's
yeah,
okay. Like if that's going to trigger you to eat the whole pint, then definitely don't reach for it. But
yeah.
when you're trying to
Because
think of a lifestyle for the rest of your life that you're going to have to stick to, you're going to have your moments. You're going to have your Thanksgivings and your Christmases and birthdays and Easter dinners, and you're going to have those times. And it's okay to have a little bit of what you like to eat every once in a while. that's just kind of what it's really taught me, that this whole process. It's like you don't have to be scared that you're never going to be able to eat or enjoy food ever again. That's just not going to be true.
Yeah, like I would, when I knew, when I wanted to put myself on a diet back when I was still binge eating, and like I would spread out all my favorites, like it was like the Last Supper, and I would like have like everything that I want. Like I'm never gonna have any of
Hmm.
this again, and I was like, that's not a way to like live life. You don't have to sacrifice every single thing that you love, but it's important just to remember that as part of like your food journey and healing your relationship with food, you just have to realize that it's okay to eat things in moderation, but it's most importantly like remember that you don't have to binge those foods just because you like them or
Yeah.
just because you feel where you feel like you messed up. I remember like being like, oh, I ate a piece of cake, I messed up my entire diet, might as well eat the entire cake. That's not my mindset anymore.
Yeah.
I have my piece of cake. I realized that I had maybe 400 calorie slice of cake. I was like, all right, I'll just log that as part of my calories and I'll just add it to the equation. And that's what I did. That's, it's not like this whole thing where I feel like I messed up. I just having something that I genuinely like.
And that's something I learned too, that my dietitian taught me, and that's why I recommend people speak with a dietitian, because they can be very, very helpful. Because if I screwed up, then I'd say, okay, my whole day screwed up. I guess I might as well go crazy, and tomorrow I'll
Yeah.
start over. She's like, no,
Yeah.
if you screw up, it's like it's okay. You can finish out your day strong. You don't have to just get this defeatist attitude and say, okay, well, my whole day's messed up. I'm gonna try tomorrow, and then you're probably gonna mess up tomorrow too, because we're not human.
Yeah.
I mean, we are human. We're not perfect, right? So it's like
Yeah.
if you screw up, you can still manage the rest of your day to fit
Yeah.
within a
It's
calorie
okay.
goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay to like if you screw up one little thing, it's better than screwing up your entire day and then over restricting the next day thinking that's gonna solve your problem when it's not. So
Yeah.
I think it's important that people learn moderation, even as somebody that's recovered from binge eating. There's definitely foods that I can't keep around my house, like those sugar cookies that I mentioned before. But there are some things that I can like. My biggest thing that I've told myself is that it's gonna be there tomorrow. That's
Yep.
like such a stupid little saying, but I'm just like, I have like this ice cream, like vanilla ice cream, because vanilla is my favorite flavor, and I eat like a serving of it, and I'm like, oh, like I eat like two or three more servings. I was like, no, it's gonna be there tomorrow. I can just have another serving tomorrow.
Yep.
It's not a big deal. And it's there tomorrow. So that's the biggest thing I told myself. Just like it's there tomorrow. It's not gonna go away. The ice cream fairy isn't gonna steal it. You can have some tomorrow.
Yep. All right, let's get into some fat acceptance talks.
Okay.
And again, those of you who are joining me now, if you have any questions for me or Kayla, go ahead and throw them in there, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So the first question that I have, I just wrote down a few questions for you. At the core of it, why do you think what do you think drives the fat acceptance movement that we see today?
I think it's a combination of a few different things. I think it's a combination of, I guess, insecurity. I think is one thing that can drive it. I think there's a lot of people that project their own images of themselves onto other people. I'm making a video about this in the future, probably actually tomorrow, where I'm talking about the is it an outfit or is she just skinny kind of trend that you see on
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, where it seems like a lot of these people project their insecurities onto another person or onto a group of people. I think that drives it a lot, but I also believe that there is this sort of attitude that fat people their entire lives have been told that there's something wrong with them. And they don't want to feel like there's something wrong with them anymore, even though if you boil it down, there is something wrong with being incredibly overweight. But being told that your entire life you want to feel like you have some source of positivity in your life or some sort of balance or something in your life where you feel as though you are not at fault for your actions or you're not a bad person. I don't think bad people are bad people at all. But I think being told for such a long time by doctors or people around you that you're overweight and that's a bad thing, it might drive people into a movement where they're being told and they're being coddled that being fat is perfectly healthy and perfectly fine and there's nothing wrong with it, and everybody that says that there is a bad person and you should turn against them. In a weird way, at least in my experience, I found in the beginning at least that quite comforting. Like, oh, these people don't care that I'm fat, even though they do. They care about how fat you are in comparison to them, sincerely. But I feel like at the core of it, it comes from people wanting to feel accepted where they haven't felt accepted before, and also people wanting a place or a group of people to be able to share in their own insecurities and so they can point it at anybody else besides themselves.
So the second part of this question, I don't know if you have the same result, but when I look at my analytics, 85% of my followers are women, and
Yeah.
I don't mind that. That's fine. um, and there was actually somebody who leveled some a complaint at me and said that I was very misogynistic because I seem to pick on fat women, and I don't think that's true. But it does seem like that there are more women who are part of this movement, the fat acceptance movement.
Yeah.
And why do you think that that is? As a woman, why would you say it seems like there are more women who are interested in these topics, in these videos, whether it's because of the fat acceptance movement or on our side of that movement?
I think that's a really good question. I do think misogyny plays a little bit of a role here. I'm not calling you misogynistic specifically, but I think misogyny does play a role into why women feel as though we need to band together in order to fight the patriarchy or what have you, though I do believe a patriarchy exists. I also believe that, in a sense, a lot of women feel as though they are the main targets when it comes to bullying, when it comes to being fat. And though men also face the the same amount or possibly less bullying for being fat, I feel as though women, at least in my experience being a woman, we want to. There's so much more of a desire for community in women-led spaces and women-led movements. There's a desire for women to stick together in order to fight this invisible monster that is classism, patriarchy, etc. And I feel like men are much more individualistic when it comes to their own needs and goals.
Hmm.
I've seen men in my life personally that are quite lonely in there and they don't really identify with any specific movement or any specific coalition. They just kind of do their own thing. They're very individualistic. But I feel as though women have this sort of mentality that we have to stick together as women in order to fight this monster. And I feel like women, especially in the fat acceptance movement, even have that more so. Like women, we all have to band together. And though I completely understand why women feel that way, I'm somebody that loves other women, that loves being around other women. I think women are fantastic. I I see it so much more common in social justice movements, especially in online spaces, that women are the ones that are forefronting these things, and it could have to do with misogyny, and I think it also could have to do with women feeling as though they need a sense of community in general.
I think that makes a lot of sense because my journey has pretty much been my journey. Until I made a YouTube channel, I had no idea there was a fat acceptance movement. I had no idea that these fat acceptance people were out there until I started, like I said, I mostly started describing my journey. Then I started doing more like my 600-pound life reactions. And then the more I did those, people are like, well, you should check out this person. You should check out that person. And I'm like appalled by what I'm seeing. It's like people are really denying medical science about the consequences of obesity. They're really shunning that. And so I've been really just doing my own deep dives, and people have been digging into this for years and years. And I remember I actually did a video in defense of Amberlyn Reed. I don't know if you ever saw that. It was up for like 2 minutes because as soon as I put it up, people were like, "You don't know what you're doing, bro. You need to take that video down. this is a bad take and everything else. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? Like, I see somebody who's trying. Like, I've watched her last few videos. She looks like she's trying. She's in the process. She's losing weight and whatever. And they're like, no, she's been doing this for 10 years, all right? She gets people on and manipulates them and pretends like she's going to do well, and then she doesn't. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this video down right now. People were very, very angry. I had no idea people felt that strongly about Amberlyn Reed. So people now
I
are, people are,
admittedly know a lot about Amber Lynn Reed. I have followed the Amber Lynn Reed verse ever. I've seen a little bit of her here and there, but I don't know all the lore. So I'm even apprehensive about making a video because I would probably have a very similar take to you as somebody who hasn't seen a lot of her content.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, from what I understand, I believe that she kind of has been doing this entire shtick for years. And as somebody that has a binge eating disorder, I know excuses when I see them. And I feel like Amberlyn Reed, from the little content that I've kind of seen of her here and there, she's definitely in that realm of just trying to make excuses for a binge eating disorder, because I used to do the same thing all the time. It would rain outside and like I'm gonna binge. Like it makes no sense. And so I definitely see a little bit of myself in her, but kind of coming out the other side and like healing from that. But I don't know much about Amber Lynn besides a few videos here and there about her.
So a lot of people in the comments, they sort of answered that women seem to be more targeted by the modern beauty standards.
Yeah, I yeah, exactly. Misogyny role definitely plays a big part of it. Women are affected by beauty standards the absolute most. Every day, women are reminded that they're not beautiful enough, that they're not pretty enough, that they're not thin enough, that they're not hot enough, young enough, whatever. And so I'm even sick of it. I'm sick of being told that I'm not good enough by society, by whatever. Like, I get it completely. I feel as though women do stick together in this sense because we are all, as women, I can only speak for myself as I am a woman, but we are constantly told since we are children that we are not good enough. And I understand why you'd want to start a movement to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that sort of thing has become a Trojan horse to let in a lot of misinformation. You know, the point of the movement is like, oh, don't you want fat people or everybody to have like self love and confidence and all this stuff? And you're like, yeah, obviously I want everybody to love themselves. And then you join this fact of this movement like I did because I'm just like, I want to love myself. I want to be in a movement that tells me that I'm good enough. Even though when you join the movement, it tells you that you're not good enough because you don't hit this point or this point or this point or this point, whatever talking points that they have. Now all of a sudden, you're not good enough for them anymore. And so, I definitely think that they mask it, like I stated before, like a Trojan horse. They say, don't you want everybody to feel loved and accepted no matter what they look like? And you're just like, boy, of course you do. And then they bring in the misinformation, the spreading of lies, the paradoxes, all of these things that make you feel like you are questioning your own beliefs. And it doesn't stay like that, you know? Like you enter this movement wanting to feel confident and you leave the movement feeling completely drained. And I don't think that's fair to anybody.
Yeah. So Elizabeth in the comments said that she has seen fat acceptance women come right out and say that men are not welcome as part of their movement. What would you say about that?
I'm just trying to provide some light here. My apologies. I
No
know we're
problem.
all very, very dark right now. And I'm just trying to offer some a little more light. Okay. That looks spooky. Oh my goodness. It's pretty.
It's not Halloween, Kayla. Come on.
I know. I look green, but it's different. But yes, I have seen myself as well men being left out of the movement intentionally. Just because it's a movement for, I guess, this ambiguous, no name, black, queer, trans woman. So this movement is for women. This movement is for Black people, this movement is for queer people, even though none of that's accurate. I feel like men are being left out of the equation. And so that is something I know I don't really like, because men, like I stated before, I think there is an issue with men being like really lonely in the modern age
Hmm.
and don't have like a sense of belonging in any sort of group. And that's also a result of the patriarchy, sincerely. And so when you try to join a fast fitness group or feel like you belong and you have all these women saying, no, this movement isn't for you, you're kind of not left with much. And I agree. I think men are often left out of the conversation because, men have bodies. Men deserve body positivity as well. And I just feel like men don't get that.
Yeah. And that's partly why I wanted to start my channel too, even though mostly women follow me. It's like, other than me and Shauna Steele, I don't know of, or maybe Obese to Beast, I don't know of any other men who are really talking about these issues and talking about obesity. And I would say that overall, men tend to be more of the ones who reach that 600, 700 pound mark than women do. Um, and it probably is because they're alone, right? Like they don't have anybody. And it's really tough being alone. And I talk about my loneliness a lot on my channel. I've probably lost a lot of subs, to be honest with you, just because the last week or two I've been down. I've been feeling lonely, and but I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I actually talk about that on my channel because I think people need to be aware that men can feel very lonely. They don't really have a group that they can join or anything else like that, and it's very difficult. And I think we do need to talk about it more.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think a lot of men are lonely. And I don't think, and I think also male peers can be quite cruel. And so being a man, it can be very lonely. I've seen it myself. I think in this modern age, and I think it's a result of a lot of different things. But I think men are expected to be such strong and at times even just um, like independent, where that hyper independence becomes a form of its own loneliness and it kind of eats it at itself. And I definitely feel as though loneliness and isolation is a huge problem with modern day men for sure.
Hmm.
I'm sorry that I look very yellow. Trying to figure out how I can fix this real quick. Give me just 1 second.
No
I feel
problem.
really bad that I'm yellow. I do have a ring light. I can grab it.
Go ahead. Yeah, take your time.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah, I don't really like doing my 600 pound life clips anymore, lady. I don't know. I think it slowed my channel down a little bit. I'm still going to do them, but not only does every single one, TLC gives me trouble for it, but I don't know. It's just I'm bored with it. Um, and I would like to tell more stories that help other people, right? Like I don't know. I just see a transition in my channel, and it might mean I lose a few subscribers, but I think I'll gain more later on as things go on because it'll just be, you know, good to talk about different subjects. But I was just answering your question, Kayla.
Yeah, of course. I heard what you were saying. Um, I really do like your 600-pound life content, but I think it's also important to pivot and talk about. There's so much that we talked about in terms of body positivity. Like I talked about capitalism. Um, I'm talking about body trends tomorrow. I talked about race in the fast food industry. There's a lot of topics that can be discussed within body positivity that still kind of go against the narrative of that acceptance without explicitly just reacting to content. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. I think it's really going to be a great pivot for you overall. I think you have a lot to say that's really important and really nuanced. And I think that diversifying that is going to be really good for you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Um,
So one of the questions that I wrote down that I think kind of pertains to your story a little bit, where you talked about how you would find yourself dealing with maybe a bit of depression or whatever, and that would drive you to eat.
yeah.
So I wrote down that I just tend to believe the thing that drives people to eat to that degree, to the point where they become obese, is that they live a miserable life. Um, and it might not always be consistently miserable, but usually most of the people we see on my 600-pound life, or even myself, have dealt with a tremendous amount of trauma. But it could also be, dips of depression, or people who face rejection, or life isn't working out how they thought that it should be working out by now. And today I did a reaction of fit to fat to fit on my Patreon. And it was very interesting because this guy got kicked out of the military, and actually he got kicked out because he did get too big for the military. But he was still sort of in shape, but he didn't fit their regulations anymore. But as soon as he got kicked out of the military, he gained 70 pounds. And they did a kind of a snapshot of his life, and he did look very miserable. He didn't go outside and play with his kids, and that really ate him up inside, because he knew he wanted to play with his daughter. His daughter was like 10 years old, and she's playing outside, and he's saying, "I just want to stay inside and watch TV." Like, he can't physically go out there and do that. And he didn't think that he would make it to 50 years old. There's a lot of fear within obese people that, man, I don't even know if I'm going to make it. Like, I don't know if I'll reach 50, 60 years old. And his own wife was saying that. Like, his wife was talking about how sad that she was seeing him do that to himself. And of course, you can also imagine the intimacy that takes a hit as a result of that. Um, so, what would you say if I said that it's impossible to be that morbidly obese and live a happy life? And I'm not trying to like generalize everybody. Every obese person is just fat and miserable. That's not what I'm trying to say. But do you think that it seems to be a perpetuating cycle, that you're miserable, so you eat, but the more you eat, the bigger you get, the more miserable you become, and that just sort of perpetuates the problem?
Yes, I definitely believe in that cycle. I definitely believe in that cycle that oftentimes with binge eaters, we um, are upset of by the fact that we binge, and so then we overly restrict, and then we binge, and then we overly restrict. It's very similar because there are so many times before entering the fast fitness space, I was trying to lose weight, and I was going about it in all the wrong ways, and I was doing it because I was miserable. And then you do it for 2 days, 2 weeks, and you give up, and you binge, and you get bigger. And I wouldn't paint every fat person with the brush that they're
Yeah.
miserable, but I will say that there is a bit of self-denial, and I think there's also a bit of um, work that needs to be done mentally as well as physically in order to come out of that space where you feel like you have to eat and eat in order to feel better. And I think that there is a lot of nuance to that entire conversation, that people do get very obese for a lot of different things and I think a big thing that people don't talk about is that people often use food in order to cope with traumas
Mhm.
and cope with life, cope with a lot of different things, and rejection, like the person in the military that you were talking about used it as a way to cope with his rejection. But from what it sounds like, I didn't watch the video, but I think people use food as a way to cope, and they think it's going to solve their problems when food simply is just that hit of dopamine. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to make you feel better in the moment, but then you're going to leave that feeling more miserable because now you are so full and you're sick and you're miserable and you've just eaten everything in your house, and then you get bigger, and then you're upset that you're bigger, and now your new coping mechanism is food. So how are you going to cope with the fact that you've gotten bigger? You're
Yeah.
going to eat more,
Hmm.
and it just continues that cycle, and nothing ever gets healed out of that. Nothing ever gets resolved out of that conversation. It's just continuous despair. And I can't paint every fat person with that brush, but I can speak for myself and many people that I know personally and who have reached out to me directly, that food has become a coping mechanism to cope with anything,
Yeah.
including the fact that we don't like it to eat so much. And I think it is a perpetual cycle for a lot of people that end up getting that way. Sure.
Yeah, I definitely run into a lot of people on my channel who are just very mean when it comes to that. Like, they don't understand the trauma behind it, or that somebody's going through a difficult time and it becomes an addiction. They don't understand that there's a whole mental part to it. They seem to think it's
Yeah.
100% physical and it's related to you just have a lack of self control, and that's it. And it really bums me out because they just sort of have this attitude like, you're a fat person, you did it to yourself, you deserve all the misery that you get from it. I have no sympathy for you whatsoever. And that really
Yeah.
makes me sad.
And I think that's what drives people into these movements,
Hmm.
because there are so many people that are so apathetic to the struggles of somebody that has gained a significant amount of weight due to something like ED or whatever. And I feel like you have people that are like, you're fat, you did it to yourself, F you basically. And that sort of apathy drives people, especially women, because women face that the most. Because on top of that, you also have the beauty standard, and then you get driven into these movements where, like I said previously, you have people presenting themselves in this mask of like acceptance and love and whatever, but when you get deep into it, you realize these are just the same people in different clothing. This is the same exact shit that I've gone through.
Hmm.
Not being good enough, not being smart enough, not being nuanced enough, not being fat enough to have these conversations because I disagree with something that's being said or whatever. And then you are dumped out for either losing weight, whatever, and then you're left feeling really alone. And so I feel like it's this very continuous cycle. I feel like if more people personally were more empathetic, we wouldn't have to create these movements that are based in falsehoods in order to please people, in order to be or show empathy to people that do just deserve empathy, no matter their situation. And so I think it is quite a bit of a cycle.
Yeah. I mean, I've had people just downright say, well, I was abused as a child and I don't have a food addiction. I'm not overweight. It's like, okay, well, good for you. I'm sure there's something that you coped with. Like
Yeah,
that
and
sort of
everybody's
trauma
all
just doesn't
manifest.
disappear, right?
Yeah, it manifests differently. Everybody struggles and it manifests differently. There are people that don't overeat, but they might drink binge drinks every weekend.
Hmm.
We don't know. You know, everybody struggles. Everybody has their different struggles, and I think it's important to be empathetic to that. I understand that you see people like Foodie Beauty or Amberlynn Reed, and at some point it is hard to be empathetic. You're just like, girl, get it together. But I try to practice empathy as much as I can because I know what it's like to be in that state where I feel really alone with myself. And yeah, I think it's important to practice empathy.
And that's why I made that video about Amberlynn Reed, because I'm in her footsteps right now. Like, I can look back and say, wow, I'm smaller than she is now, but I used to be probably 100 pounds heavier than she is at her heaviest. And okay, she's been doing this for 10 years, but I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah,
Failed diets and trying to give myself encouragement, trying to join the bariatric program, failing out of that, and just back and forth, back and forth. And
yeah,
of course, I'm not saying she's not a manipulator and all that stuff that people say that she is, but just from what I've seen when I look at her videos, I'm like, that's me.
yeah,
That's what it's like to struggle with obesity for 20 years in my life. I don't know how old she is. If she's younger than me, she probably is. But it's like, I've struggled for 20 years with that. I failed and failed and failed, and I lost 100 pounds, and I gained it back and gained 150 pounds. And then I did good for a while, and I lost another 100 pounds. And then I lost my dad, and I gained 300 pounds. It's like, it's ups and downs and just struggling and failing and trying again. And it really took this last time getting with the right bariatric program that had counseling, that told me for the very first time that it's mostly mental battle that you're dealing with. You're an emotional eater, you deal with binge eating. I lost my dad in a horrific way. I was sexually abused as a child, mentally and physically abused as well. And like, I didn't know how to deal with any of that trauma except for food. That's the one thing that I ran to. And other people in my family, like, they're big drug addicts and they're alcoholics and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I'm the only big person who ran to food, but my whole family went through a lot of trauma and they turned to different things. And some things are more socially acceptable than others. So when you see a fat person, you just think, oh, that person just needs to eat a salad. But they don't understand the deep trauma behind it.
Yeah, there
And it,
is.
and
There's
it
a lot of them.
and it drives me crazy, you know?
Yeah, because even though I'm critical of Amber Lynn Reed or creators like Amber Lynn Reed, Hungry Fat Chick, etc., I can still practice empathy
Yeah.
while critiquing them. You know, if we look at every fat person in the same way, it's not going to really be impactful. But when I look at the fat acceptance movement, I really try to get into this mindset that I was in when I joined it.
Mm-hmm.
What did Kayla 2 years ago need to hear? What does she need to hear in order to get better?
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think that's important to practice. I think it's important for people that were in the fat acceptance movement, that have left the fat acceptance movement, to speak out, even if they're going to get hate, like Gabriella Stano did. Even if people are going to slack on her and be mean to her and stuff, I think what she said was really important because she was telling not only her audience but herself that it's time to move on and it's time to get better and it's time to leave a movement that is meant to coddle the emotions of people that may not have experienced empathy from other people
Mm-hmm.
before. And I think it's important that when I critique the Paxton's movement, I think about where I was 2 years ago and what I needed to hear. And I think that's really important for other people to hear as well.
Yeah, very much so. And
Yeah.
that's why I think my channel is a little more unique in yours as well, and those that are um, starting to talk about these issues more. It's that I can put myself in their shoes and I can see it. You know,
Yeah.
something that I'm getting frustrated with is when I do these plot twist video reactions and they just make fun of them the whole time. And I'm sitting there cringing, trying to think of something that I could say and pause the video and make my comments. And I'm like, why am I reacting to this? They're being very rude and very mean. And do these people really think those kinds of comments are going to help people turn around their trauma? Or do you think it's adding to it? It's
I
adding
think,
to it because any time that I've been made fun of or beat up or anything because of my weight or any of the loneliness that I face or the rejection I get from women or any of those things, do you think it makes me say, okay, well, I think I can do better now? Or do you think it makes me run back towards food? You
yeah.
know, so like I was saying, it wasn't until I got with the right program that and I spoke to the right person and had a dietitian sit down with me and go over everything that I ate and had access to a psychologist who helped me work out the trauma and everything else that I was finally able to figure it out that it is a mental battle, that I was compensating for so much loss in my life, and now that I'm able to be successful because of it. And so I think that's where my channel differs from a lot of these others, is because it's like I do have sympathy. I do understand where you're at, and I am going to be tough. I'm going to show some tough love because I think that's necessary, but I'm not going to beat you up over it. You know, I know you're going to fail. I know you're going to struggle. I know you're going to mess up. I understand all that, but that's why I want to shake some of these people and be like, why are you in this movement? Like, you're not only killing yourself, but you're dragging people with you. You know, and it's just it's very frustrating all the time dealing with that.
No, I understand completely.
So I got one final question for you, and then we can end it. It's been about an hour since we came on. It seems like it's
Okay.
been like 10 minutes, but
Yeah. Sure.
it's so fun chatting with you. But
I think so.
the obesity epidemic is getting worse. Why do you think we are losing the war with obesity?
It'll be a long answer, so buckle up. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of factors why we're losing the war of obesity is because I'm gonna. There's a lot of factors, but let me start with capitalism. There is an intersection between the healthcare industry, or the healthcare system in this country, capitalism, poverty, all these different factors that play into obesity as a whole. And we're not winning the war against obesity because there was never a war. Obesity has always been played. It's always been here. As far as it becoming since the 1980s, it's only ever gone up. And there's a reason for that. It's
Hmm.
because it's a very profitable thing. Obesity makes this country a lot of money because you have the diet industry that makes money off of people wanting to lose weight and playing into those insecurities and things like that. And then you have the fast food industry that makes money off of people becoming addicted to food. And then you even have those intersections where companies like um, Unilever and Coca-Cola and PepsiCo that own a section of both of those industries, the diet industry and the fast food industry, or the processed food industry. Um, it feels like us as people, we're being kind of tossed around here as far as obesity goes, as far as the battle of obesity. Because you have people that are profiting off of your insecurities if you want to lose weight, and you have companies profiting off of the fact that they have implemented themselves in these towns and neighborhoods and these urbanized areas that are mostly just people of color and poor communities, where that might be their only option.
Hmm.
And it's really causing a huge epidemic with obesity, a huge epidemic for the healthcare system where people are dying from obesity related causes much more frequently and at much younger ages. And I think that in order to win the war against obesity, we have to win the war against poverty, against capitalism, against anything like that, sincerely. There's always money to be made when it comes to these markets. There's always money to be made when it comes to obesity. And ever since companies like McDonald's, Unilever, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo found out that they could make money off of the decrease in health of its own citizens, of its own populace, then you kind of realize that they're not going to slow down. And though, like, I'm very critical of capitalism, I understand why capitalism is necessary to
Hmm.
some extent, but I'm still very critical of the structure as a whole because I feel like it's played a huge role in the obesity epidemic, much deeper than I think just something like willpower or resilience or whatever. I think it intersects with a lot of different things. And so when I'm critical of capitalism or I'm critical of the acceptance movement, what I'm critical of is giving up the fight against companies that are willing to make money off of your demise.
Yeah.
And that's why fat acceptance is a movement, for me at least, that really does bother me because I feel like we're telling people that have more agency and more autonomy than they're being led on to be, that they should just give that up for the sake of this movement. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair. I think we have much more control, even though there are some things that we don't have control over. I'm never going to be able to control the amount of McDonald's in a given urban area, but I can control where I put my money, and I can control what I put in my body, and I can't control the information that I share online. And so I think it's important that we remain critical of these sorts of topics, even if we do support things like capitalism, even if we do support things like back stuff. And so it's important that we remain critical even if we support it, just because I think it's always important to remain vigilant and aware of what's going on in this world. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when the average person thinks of an obese person, they don't think of people who are impoverished and living in poverty. They think of a rich celebrity who just can afford all the fancy food that they want. But it's the flip of that. Because if you look at someone like The Rock, okay, well, he has a chef and he has personal trainers, and his lifestyle allows him to stay in pretty good shape. I'm a straight guy, but sometimes looking at The Rock, uh, um, but I used to
Yeah.
live in Flint, Michigan, and you would just be amazed at what there is there in terms of grocery stores and what's available. And it's weird to think, okay, well, people are poor. They don't have enough money to buy all this food, so why are they technically obese? But it's for every reason that you just said. It's like I used to be so poor that the only thing that I could do with my food stamps is go down the frozen food aisle and buy the cheap processed crap and convince myself that that was healthy because that's what I could afford. I couldn't afford to go get some meat and vegetables and all that stuff. It had to be the dollar $2 stuff, and the frozen dinners and all that stuff. And even now I'm struggling financially really bad. So guess what's in my freezer? I have lean cuisines, which I don't think they're too horribly bad for you, but it's not what I want to be doing right now. I'd love to be on a high protein, low carb diet and stick with that, but I just can't afford to do it right now. Uh, Things are really, really expensive right now, and I'm on a very, very limited budget, so that's what I can afford, and that's what I'm going to eat. And so I'm
Yeah.
kind of like thinking on like, okay, well, I'm doing a what I eat in a day type video this Saturday, and I know I'm going to get people saying, why are you eating lean cuisines? Like, why are you eating that crap? It's frozen food and this and that. It's like that's what I can afford. It's $3 for a whole dinner versus what it would cost me to you know, get enough protein for the entire week. It's very, very expensive.
Yeah, of course. And I think I made a video about this recently that um, it was almost 2 months ago, so I guess not that recently, where I was talking about the juxtaposition, I guess, between fast food and store bought food, and how fast food is becoming way more expensive these days due to inflation and things like that. And so at times, getting the rice and the beans and the really boring food, sorry, the rice and the beans and the boring food is a little bit less expensive, but there are situations where convenience stores are the only option, or food banks. And so I provided a lot of information regarding food banks and the bus routes to get to those specific food banks. And I think that information is really helpful to people because I've been to food banks before as a child, and they do have rice and they have beans and they have things that you can make pretty decent meals with. And I think we need more resources like that. And I feel like those resources are incredibly underfunded, where it's based on donation. It's based on, donating to your local church or your local group. And I understand that not a lot of people donate to those causes or can afford to. And so those causes may even go underfunded to the point where they're not even able to provide services to their own communities. And so I think it's important that people who can donate to local food organizations do so, because there are people that are struggling, paycheck to paycheck, living day by day, that want to be healthier, that don't want to eat processed foods. And I think um, it's important that we recognize that obesity and poverty do, at least in this country, do go hand in hand in a lot of different ways. But it doesn't mean that we should not acknowledge the health effects of obesity. We can acknowledge that obesity plays a role in terms of poverty and capitalism, things like that, while also recognizing that obesity isn't healthy and is slowly hurting many different communities, including communities of color, at faster rates than their white counterparts. And we can realize that this cycle is very dangerous and is hurting a lot of different kinds of people.
I think we should get all of our channels that are like the same, and we should put together some kind of campaign where we get this issue out there. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we should like exchange emails and try to figure it out, and
I
just
love that. Yeah.
talk
I
about this.
donate to the local food bank every month. It's not, $10 a month, nothing crazy, but it helps provide food for my local community, and I would love to be able to do that to get a campaign going. And I think that'd be fantastic that we all contribute to a larger campaign to help food in insecure areas. That'd be awesome. I'm very passionate about more things that I'm passionate about poverty, but I grew up poor and I grew up not having a lot of resources, being on food stamps and stuff as a kid. And so I try to give back as much as I can, and I think it's important that people who can give back do so, especially those that are critical of fat acceptance. If you have the means to give back and give money to your local food bank so more people could have healthier things to eat, I think that's also really important.
It is. It is. I think we'll end it there, Kayla. I really appreciate you coming on my show this week.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate you interviewing me.
It was awesome to have you, and I'm excited to do this again with you. Um, so next time we'll do the full 24-hour one, right? Like you could take.
I was concerned. I was like, girl, are you for real? 24 hours?
Yeah, she asked me how long it would be, and I said, "Oh, we're going live for 24 hours," and she freaked out. So, all right, Kayla. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Do you have any last words, or?
I don't actually do. I'm gonna plug myself a little bit. For those who've never seen my face before, hi. Kayla, and I have my own channel. I'm sure Big T will put it in his description box. Also, feel free to follow me on my journey to run my first ever half marathon. So yeah, I appreciate everybody that came by and watched me ramble today. But yeah, I thank you everybody so much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate you and all of your followers as well who might be watching. So, hello, I'm Big T. So we will talk to you soon, Kayla. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you too.
All right, have a good